A couple of weeks ago, we had a look at a spreadsheet system for um, doing your bookkeeping, and tonight you'll have a chance to compare that to proper. When I say proper, I mean in what we call integrated accounting software, as opposed to a spreadsheet. I could quite easily advise individual people whether they're probably best suited to use Excel or Xero. It's more difficult to do so generally. I would suggest possibly that, frankly, unless you've got very few transactions, a very small business, I would always use a bookkeeper to do your bookkeeping, just in the same way that you use a solicitor for legals and a surveyor for surveying. I don't think it changes when it comes to accountancy and bookkeeping. I do feel that unless you are particularly good at software and very precise in your work, that if you do use something like Xero, that would probably be, I would probably say even more so, that you probably should use a bookkeeper. Some people are very adept at using software and precise at transactions. They may well cope with it themselves. If you're using the Excel system, because most of us know how to use Excel, then you probably could do it yourself, or a typical admin VA probably could do it for you rather than a fully fledged bookkeeper. But as I said, if you're going to use something like Xero, then I do feel that you need to consider using a bookkeeper. Anyway, it is a small number tonight relative to usual, although I had a very high level of registrations, so perhaps there's something on that I don't know about. But anyway, I'm going to hand over to Lindsay, my bookkeeper, and she's going to show you the basics of Xero and really just give you the chance to have a feel as to what you have to do if you are a bookkeeper and if you are using Xero. Although Xero is different obviously to QuickBooks and Sage, they are pretty similar and mainly do the same sort of things. It's just the layout of them can be a little different, but they are basically doing the same things. The reason why I've done Xero tonight is that I do think it is the market leader. It is the newest product. It was built new in the digital age. It has far more integrations than the other products with other apps, including property-related apps like Arthur. I know it's a bit of a funny name. I always say that when I mention that name, but there is, believe it or not, some property-related software called Arthur. I'll hand over to Lindsay now. So, Lindsay, if you take over, please.
Hi, everyone. So I'm probably just going to go straight in on this.
Yeah.
And share my screen. Let's get cracking. So, brief introduction to Xero. When you log into your company, you're going to see this dashboard. This is what you'll always come to when you log in. You've got little breakdowns of your bank balances, any accounts that you're keeping an eye on, any invoices that are owed to you, and any bills that you might need to pay. From that screen, you can go into each of those items if you want to. On the top, you'll see a toolbar which has various items. Payroll and project are add-ons, so you wouldn't normally have those in there, so we're not going to look at those. But your business is where you're going to find all your sales invoices, all your purchase invoices, any quotes and things. Accounting's where you're going to find all your reports. So if you want to run a profit and loss, or you want to go into your chart of accounts and find where things are posted, you can do all that here. And then you've got your contacts, which way you'll find all your customers and suppliers. So
I'm just going to explain that term posted, because Lindsay, will be using that. When you post a transaction, you actually add it to the system. So that's posting a transaction. But Lindsay also referred to the chart of accounts to see where things are posted. So in a way, posting, you might prefer to say enter a transaction, but then if it's repairs, you post it to repairs. If it's marketing, you post it to marketing. So posting really means where you assign a transaction to.
yeah.
Okay, back to Lindsay.
Before I go into any of these, I'm going to set something up that I think would be quite relevant to those of you that have got property businesses, multiple properties, or any business that's got multiple departments or items that you want to keep a track of. So, for example, if you're a chain of coffee shops and you've got 6 different shops, we can track each of those shops individually. Same that we could do properties. So we have something in Xero called tracking categories. And I'm going to add this in now to show you how you use that. So I'm going to add the tracking category for property. Property name. Oh, and I can't spell. So we're going to say 1 Main Street, 2 High Street, 3 Schooling. Right. So they're my 3 properties that I own in my business. So I'm going to save all those because every transaction that I post in here, I want to allocate to a set property so that then we can later drill down reports and see how each of those properties is doing. We can see if all the bills for those properties have been paid. We can see a P&L for each property. So you've got an idea on what your losses or profits are for that property in particular. I'm actually going to add one more just for general. The reason I'm adding the general code is because there will sometimes be things like accountancy fees that you don't apportion to one property. You'll have that as a general admin cost. So they're going to be my tracking categories. And I'm going to use them throughout the demonstration. So first, I'm going to show you raising a sales invoice. So we're in our business invoices. And this is where you'll find all the sales invoices that have been raised up to date. And it will tell you along the side here, on the right-hand side, whether they're awaiting payment, whether they've been paid, whether they're still in draft because they've not actually been posted yet. So they've not actually been approved and sent to the client. They'd stay in draft there. You can also see at the far right if they've actually been sent out to people. So the sent is if they've been emailed. And if you go into those invoices and scroll down to the bottom, the history will tell you if that's actually been sent. And this one tells me I've sent it out on the 12th of May. So you can find those details out. If somebody says we've not received it and we say, oh, it was sent on this date, you can go and have a look for that. We can resend it anyway, not a problem. So back into my invoices, and I'm going to create a new invoice. And I'm going to create it for Boom FM, because I like the name. Got today's date, and our due date's going to be in 7 days. So I'm going to put that 7 days in there. You can set defaults on these so that they automatically go on 0 days, 1 day, 7 days, whatever term you want. But obviously I've not got a default set up, so I've just typed that in today. I am going to send somebody a consultancy fee invoice. And it's going to be for a £1,000 including VAT. So I've got this tax inclusive button selected because I want it to include the VAT. I don't want VAT added onto that £1,000. So if you see the breakdown at the bottom here, it's got your VAT. So over on this tab, we've got our account code, which is sales. All my invoice is going to go to sales. Our tax rate is 20% because I'm VAT registered. If you're not VAT registered, you don't automatically default to no VAT. And then I'm going to select the property. Now this bill is going to relate to number 2 High Street. So that invoice is ready to go.
Can I just jump in a second just to avoid any confusion? This demonstration is really covering general businesses as well as property.
Yeah.
So Lindsay has correctly set up some tagging or tracking, for the houses, but then she's invoiced to one of the houses' consultancy. That's fine. This is just a demonstration, but if anyone's watching and is just a little confused, Lindsay could have just called that rent, and that could be rent to a tenant, and that would be a sale in the normal way. Probably wouldn't have VAT on it, unless it was a holiday let or something like that. But the same principles apply, but just in case anyone is a little confused because you set up the tracking for the properties and then it issued an invoice with that for consultancy. It's really just a demonstration, but I thought I'd jump in and say that.
Yeah, that's fine. So if I approve this invoice from that page, I can then, once it decides to approve, I can then email that to the customer. In your contact, you'd set up their email addresses when you set them up. I'm not going to email that out to anybody. But from there, you'd send it out and that's it. It's done. It'll tell you it's sent. We're all good. In fact, let me just switch invoices. So we've got that there now. We can see that in our invoice list at the top there, and it's showing as unsent because I'm not sent it. Let me go back in and send it just so you can see the way that changes. So if I email that, I'm going to send that to myself if I can. And then back in our invoice list, you'll see that's now been sent. It's still showing as due to be paid. We've not had it paid yet. So that's how you raise just a standard invoice. I've just received it on an email now. You can set up repeating invoices. So, for example, if you have a tenant that wants a rent invoice every month, you can set up a repeating invoice for them. So we can set these up to go on any repetitive transaction date that you want. So it can be weeks or months. So I could do it every 3 months or every 4 weeks or whatever you wanted to do that. So if I set up one that goes every month from the 1st of May, and it's going to be due on the 1st of that current month. So it's due the same day because I'm quite mean. And I'm not going to have an end date on there because it's going to be a rolling contract that I'm going to leave. You can put an end date on there if they're definitely going to have just a short-term tenancy. And then let's say this is for Capital Co. And it's going to be rent for number 2 High Street. I'm sticking with that one because it will make more sense later. And that's no VAT. Number 2 High Street. So that's how my invoice will look. So it's £650 for a month with no VAT. And I'm going to tick this box up here that says approve for sending. So what that means is every time this automatically creates each month, it will automatically send that email out. So you don't have to go in and send it out at all. It will just do it exactly. As soon as the first hits, it will send that out. So if I save that, it's going to ask me for an email address again. And that's done. That's set up now. So on the first of every month, I'm going to get an invoice for £650 for rent for number 2 High Street. Tells me when the next invoice is due. Whenever I go into my all invoices, I should be able to search for Capital Cab. And there's that first rent invoice. Because that's raised on the first of the month, that one's not actually been sent out because the date's already passed, and it tells you that when you first create it, it tells you you've passed the date. So I have to send that out manually. But every other one from now on will send out.
Now, people on here with property might not be familiar with sending an invoice to the tenant. And frankly, if you don't want to send the invoices to the tenants, just don't bother.
No.
But I still think there's value in actually setting it up on this system, because you will your system, Xero, will automatically tell you if a tenant has paid, not paid, has paid but not the right amount. So I still think there's considerable value in setting these up, even if you don't actually send it to the tenant.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. It's always useful. So that's raising an invoice, raising a recurring invoice. It's quite straightforward. And there are demos on each of the pages. So if you ever got stuck, you could go and find the demo for it and watch that. So if we jump over to bills to pay, so they're all your purchase bills, purchase invoices. What you can do in here is you can email bills in. So there's this little tab at the top that says automate bill entry. If I click that, at the bottom, there's a unique email address that is just for your Xero account. So I copy that and I go over into an email. I'm going to forward this email into the account now. Paste that email. And I'm going to send that in. Just give it maybe 30 seconds. I'm just waiting for it to pop into the draft box. There it is. So this is all your bills. Here, this draft just appeared a number 1 next to it. If I click on that, that's the bill that I've just sent in via email. So if we click into it, it will show you a preview of that invoice at the side. So from there, I'm going to take all the details off that. Often it does read all the details off it, but not quite always. So this one said no contact. It didn't read what contact it had come from. So I need to put Microsoft in there. It's picked up the date correctly, and it's picked up the invoice number correctly, and it's even picked up the amount correctly. And this is just a subscription for Microsoft, and it's on a VAT reverse charge. So that's going to be there. I'm going to put that to general because it doesn't relate to any property. So that's our invoice. I'm happy that I'll just pop it out and make it a little bit bigger. I'm happy that that is the correct amount and all the details match there. So I'm going to approve that bill now. And there it is. That will sit in our bills to pay, waiting to be paid now. So if I look on awaiting payments, I've just searched for Microsoft and there is that bill. So if you ever need to go in and check that bill for any reason, instead of hunting through paperwork or emails, you can come into Xero, search for it, click on the little file, and you can see a preview of that email, of that invoice, sorry. So that's quite useful because you don't need to keep paperwork now. You can keep electronic copies of everything, and that's fine for HMRC.
So far, in just a few minutes, we've entered 2 sales invoices, one for consultancy and one for rent, which we set up as a recurring monthly invoice. We've also now added a purchase invoice or a supplier invoice from Microsoft, which was emailed directly into the system. Just before we go on to payments and receipts or whatever you want to go on to, can you just refer to HubDoc and scanning in suppliers' invoices?
Yes. So I can't actually show you HubDoc on here because it won't let me connect it to a demo company. But Xero, when you've got a Xero subscription to a standard package or higher, you get a free subscription to HubDoc. And HubDoc is basically a bit of technology that reads invoices. So a bit like what Xero's just done there, but more intuitive. So it wouldn't tell me that there was no contact name because it would find that contact name. So what you do with that, you can either email the invoices in the same way that I've just done to Xero, but to a HubDoc email, or you can scan them and upload them from your desktop. When they go into HubDoc, they extract all the data that's on there. You check it over and you ping it into Xero, and that will come straight through in the way that this has. It will show you the attachment and all your details. You can set up rules on that as well, so that any bills, for example, this Microsoft one, we know we're always going to post that to subscriptions. So you can set up a rule on it in HubDoc so that every time it sees a Microsoft bill, it will automatically code it to subscriptions, and it will automatically post it straight into Xero without you needing to go to check it or approve it. I tend to do that, but only let them post it as a draft, because sometimes I do still want to check that everything has come in correctly. But 9 times out of 10, I'm literally looking at it and going, that's absolutely perfect, approve. So it'll take me 3 seconds to approve a bill that could have taken me 40, 50 seconds previously if I've had to go through it all. So that's a real good kind of time cutting exercise to use something like that. If you've got a lot of invoices, if you've only got a handful, it's probably not worth it. But if you're dealing with a high volume of invoices, it is a useful tool and it's free. So it's worth it. So,
incidentally, if you're out and about and you have
yes,
you pay for something, maybe a train fare or something, you can actually just take a photograph from your mobile phone and just press send, or submit, whatever word Xero uses, and it does exactly what Lindsay has just done with that Microsoft invoice. It attaches it to the email and sends it to Xero, and it sits there waiting for you or your bookkeeper to get to work and processes it. And if you set up a rule, it will just go straight into subscriptions, or it will sit in, as Lindsay prefers to do, just so she can look at it for 2 or 3 seconds and hit the button, approve, approve, approve. And the more you use the system, the more familiar you get with your regular suppliers, you'll probably eventually be confident that all the Microsoft ones are correct, and that even probably you won't take 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the app is actually really good, the HubDoc app. It's good for being on the move, and those little receipts that you end up losing in the car or washing in the washing machine in your pocket. It's quite handy. As soon as you get them, take a picture. I do that all the time now. I'll go and get petrol, get in the car and straight away take a picture and then just throw the receipt away because I don't need to worry about it again then. So it's quite handy. We're going to come to the bank account now. and have a little look at how we reconcile the bank. So bank accounts in Xero are connected via a bank feed. So you'll put your bank account details in and it will ask you to log in to your bank account via Xero. And all that does is extracts the data, doesn't give any permissions to make payments or anything else. It just pulls in your statement lines every single day. So what we've got here, this 29 items, these are all items that have been pulled through on the bank feed. And every day that updates. Depending on the bank account that you're using, some of them like Monzo and Revolut and some of the online banks, they update immediately. Others take 24 hours. But either way, next day you're going to have all your transactions in there from the previous day. So when they come in, Xero tries to look for a match. So on the left-hand side, these are the actual statement lines from your bank. The right-hand side is where you're going to code it into Xero or what you're going to match it to. So if we see this second transaction, it's gone green at the side because Xero has recognised that this is Ridgeway University invoice 35 and it's found that everything matches. It's the same name, invoice number, amount. So we can click OK on that because we're happy that that matches. Same with this one. It's the same name and amount, the date's right. I'm happy with that. I'm going to match it. Smart agency, it's a big amount and I think that that should probably have an invoice. So I'm just going to go and search and wonder why that's not got an invoice for Smart. And it's because there's two. So if I select both of those invoices, it then goes green because those two amounts add up to this amount. So we can reconcile that because I'm happy that Smart Agency are paying for those two invoices. Sorry, we're paying Smart Agency for both of those two invoices.
Just to clarify, what we're doing here now is we're looking at bank payments and we're looking to match them to those invoices. Now, the only supplier invoice that Lindsay brought in was £28.20 from Microsoft. Well, this is a dummy or a demo business. So we're not going to find a payment for £28.20 because it's nothing to do with this business. Although perhaps, Lindsay, you might say, well, can we set up a manual payment? But I might be confusing there. That might
we can, but I wouldn't recommend that.
We wouldn't recommend it, no. Because what we're doing is we're using bank feed. It's sucking in all the information from the bank either immediately or within 24 hours, and then we're going looking to match. Some it will intuitively know exactly which. Some, like that one for Smart, we just had to give it a little bit of help because it couldn't quite match the payment to the invoices plural because there were two of them.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on, Lindsay.
Yeah. So this City Limousines one here, the reference in it says that it's for invoice 17 part. So I'm just going to search for that 0017. And that's an invoice for City Limousines. It's a £250 invoice. They're only paying £100 of it. So to mark just £100, I need to do something slightly different. So if I tick that box, that would mark the whole £250 as paid. And it would have a reconciliation adjustment there, which would sit on our balance sheet and we'd want to know why there's £150 difference, why that invoice is fully marked as paid if it's not. So this little button here that says split is your friend when you're part paying invoices. So if I click that and we are just part paying the £100 on it, if I click split on that, it's only going to mark £100. It then leaves £150 balance on that invoice. So we're not going to be incorrectly marking the whole invoice as paid when it's not. We're just marking what's been paid. We're leaving a balance and that's all good. If you look at this Ridgeway banking fee here, it's put some details in the side. That's because Xero remembers where that was last coded to. So this is probably a fee that they get every month, and it's remembered where it's been posted to previously. With the likes of these, I would set up a bank rule so that even if it didn't remember it, it would have a rule on it so it knows exactly where it goes. So I'll click the options. I'm going to create the bank rule on it.
So what you're saying there, Lindsay, is if Xero hasn't quite used enough of its brain to set up a rule for itself, you can manually help it and set up a rule for it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pulled in the payee in the description from that main screen. I'm just going to get rid of that fee, because what it does, it looks for those words on both lines and it will take either of those. So I don't want it to find someone that says fee and apply this rule to it, because there could be something else that says fee or feed, or it would pull that through incorrectly. So I just want it to have this Ridgeway Banking Corporation, and it might not necessarily be on the payee line. So I'm going to say if any text field contains these words, then the rule is going to be post to Ridgeway Bank. So that's going to be my contact. And then I'd like it to be bank fees. Oh. And there's no VAT, and that's going to be a general expense because it's not related to any property. And then the name of the rule, I'm just going to leave it as Ridgeway Banking because I'm quite happy with that. And I'm going to save that. And when I go back to that statement page now, hopefully there's going to be a rule set up on there. There we go. So it says apply rule. So there is a rule on this Ridgeway Banking, which I've just created. If that comes up and you're not quite sure if that's right, you can view the details of that rule just by clicking that button. And you can see it's bank fees, it's going to bank fees, and it's general. So we're happy with that. We know that is correct. So I'm going to save that and then scroll up again. You see it's green. I'll just click OK to reconcile it. This one's already had a bank rule set up on it previously, so I'm going to check the details of that. General expenses 20%, but it doesn't have a property name in. So we could add a property name into that. I'm going to put the high street address on there. And I'm going to save that. Reconcile it. So I won't go through and reconcile the whole bank account, but
I'd go on to receipts unless there's something particular you want to mention on payments before you move on.
No, that's fine. So not that one. Right. So we've got here Majestic Contracting sublet. It's not picking up an invoice. So let's go and search for it. And there isn't an invoice for Majestic. So we know what that's for. So I'm just going to cancel that search that I've made.
Just in case it wasn't obvious, on the left-hand side, it's the £14.30 in the middle of the screen is on the spent payment side. The Majestic, just above it, is on the received side. So you know that we're now, when we're looking at the Majestic, we're now talking about money received, whereas previously we were talking about money paid.
Yeah. So we've got no invoice for that one, but we know who it's from and we know what it's for. So we're going to just create a posting to the sales account on the ledger. We're not going to create an invoice for it. We're going to directly post it. So I'm just going to type all the details in here.
Sometimes it happens that you might do some business with somebody and they might say, just, do you want me to pay you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that would be lovely. I haven't sent you an invoice. I'll send you an invoice later. Oh, don't worry. Send me the invoice, but here's the payment.
Yeah.
You know, So you get back to your office and you actually find somebody's paid you before you've even had chance to
Yeah.
send them an invoice. More likely to happen you paying something before they've sent you the invoice. But we can deal with that. We can deal with anything. Yeah.
So I've put the details in there and I'm just going to post it directly to the sales account.
Yeah.
I've selected that property again. There is a reason I'm selecting the same property all the time, because I want to show you the reports on it. So if I click OK on that, that will reconcile that. There's a few more that have pulled through.
Yeah. That one you can just agree. Yeah.
It's got a different invoice number, but we don't know why. I'd probably look at that if that was me. But it has got the same. It has got the same value.
Yeah.
So there's my bank rule that I set up before. So it's picked up again on the following week where there's another fee. With the tracking category that I keep selecting, I was doing that because I want to show you how you can then create reports for that specific property. Now, I know we've not really posted many transactions in there, but I'm going to go and run a P&L account, profit and loss account, just for that one property, so we can see all of those transactions that have been posted in there. So this is the overall profit and loss. This is everything that's been posted in this financial year. But if I select 2 High Street property and update that, that will then only show the items that have been posted to that one. You could select all 3 of your properties and apply that and have them side by side. It's not going to show me because there's nothing in them. Sorry about that. If you selected all 3 properties, you'd have one for each side by side, so you can compare how well each one's doing. And if they're comparable properties, if you've got 3 in the same block and you want to see which one's making more money, which one's costing you a lot, you can run a P&L with each one side by side, and it'll give you the totals of all as well still. So that's really useful.
The reason why this could be very useful is when you come to do your tax return, because let's say the 3 properties you've got, one is a buy-to-let and one is a holiday let, let's say, for example. From the tax webinars we've done, or the HL could be a serviced accommodation, or the buy-to-let could be an HMO. From the tax webinars we've done that HMOs and buy-to-lets go in one place on the tax return, and holiday lets and serviced accommodation go in another section on the tax return. I know that's changing next year, but let's not talk about that for the moment. But the ability to track the properties and then do reports based on each property or a selection of properties makes it very easy to do your tax return.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also useful, for a limited company that's got multiple branches or multiple locations, and they want to track them and compare which one of their branches is worth keeping on. If they decide that they're going to close one, they can easily see which one of them is making the most losses, which one's the one that we need to get rid of. It's just a good way to keep an eye on each individual property or branch rather than
job or project.
Yeah.
So a builder might track all his different building sites.
Yeah. So I do have a client that works in renewable energies. So they do a lot of big projects that we set up tracking categories for. So all the sales invoices, all the purchases, and actually some parts of salary costs as well will get posted against those codes. So we can run down a P&L for each project and see what money they're making on it, making sure that they're hitting the targets. So it is really useful. another report that I just wanted to go into was just an account transaction report, which we might not have enough information on here, if I'm honest. But quite useful, again, for end of year. You can run this report out and just go through everything and check that things are coded in the right place and check that everything's got a code and everything's got a property name or a branch name. So if it has, it will show you on the right hand side in the far column. If it's not, we need to assign one. And then that will help with your profit and loss accounts for Clive at the year end for showing what each one's done rather than just a general P&L and then him having to go through and try and figure it out and dissect it all. So yeah, that's that. Clive, was there anything else that you?
No, I was just going to come in there and say the key points we wanted to go through tonight was how to raise a sales invoice, whether that's a general business that raises an invoice for consultancy, like Lindsay did, or whether it's a property business that raised an invoice for rent. Now, as I said, just in case to remind you, you may not, obviously the consultancy business would send out the consultancy invoice to their client to get paid. In a landlord situation, you may not physically send the invoices to every tenant every month, but that still doesn't stop you raising the invoice on the system, Xero system, so that you can check that all of your tenants are paying all of their rent on a consistent basis. Now, I appreciate if you've only got one property and it's a buy-to-let, it's only one invoice a month. And if it's managed, your agent will let you know if they're not paying. And you'll know anyway, because you're only checking one payment a month. But if you've got an HMO with 6 different tenants, if you've got 3 or 4 properties with several tenants each, then it can get a little confusing. And the right way to do it would be to enter the invoice for the rent, whether or not you bother sending it to the tenant themselves. They are entitled to one, but tenants rarely, if ever, ask for one. On the other side, Lindsay posted or entered 2 transactions on the payment side. Just one she raised. One was for a Microsoft subscription for software. And then Lindsay went into the bank side of things because she's now raised a sales invoice, an example. She's now raised a purchase or supplier invoice as an example. So she's gone over to the bank and said, now let's have a look at our bank payments. Can we see any payments, or can we now match those payments to the various invoices from suppliers? Yes, we can. How do we do it? Xero helps us because it suggests a match. If it doesn't suggest a match, we can help the system find it, just by searching for the amount or the name, and we match them. And then on the payment, that was the payments, and on the receipts equally, we can match if the customer pays the rent, or if the tenant pays the rent, or the customer pays the consultancy fee. We can match it. Then we talked about how we would use tracking, and tracking in a property business would be tracking each property. And Lindsay then talked about the reports. So really, before we go on to sort of Q&A, well, that's a summary, because that's more or less what I did when I showed you the Excel system 2 weeks ago. I showed you how to enter a receipt and how to enter a payment. and then how to look at the reports and which I called summaries. So really, on this demonstration, I think it would be wrong to go much further into detail and examples. You know, we can raise credit notes, for instance, and match those against invoices. So that's not a problem. Whether that's on the supplier side or the sales side. So all those things can be done. We talked about shortcuts, two major shortcuts. One is bank feed. Bank feed enables Xero to pull the transactions from your bank account, from the business bank account, your bank account. It'll pull the receipts and pull the payments in and offer a suggestion like we saw before as to how to match it. The other shortcut is that you can use you can either directly email a single invoice, correct me if I'm wrong incidentally, Lindsay, at any point. You can either directly email an invoice, so if you receive an email an invoice from a supplier, you can just forward it to that particular email address that you're given, and it'll post it for you directly in. If at the end of the week, you've got 10 invoices sitting on your in tray from 10 different suppliers, you can scan them in as a bundle and just upload them into Xero, and it will post them for you. That's just and then what you do is you cast your eye over them as they enter them, and you just click approve, approve, approve. So you might take 3 or 4 seconds for each one. You'll get to know which are the ones that never ever have a mistake. Some occasionally it can't quite read the invoice. Can it read handwritten invoices, Lindsay?
Yes, it can, but I don't trust.
No, I don't rely. I don't.
We have
where you have to spend a few. You either post those manually. That's your choice. Or if you do use the HubDoc system, then you'll need to spend more than 2 or 3 seconds approving them, because you might have to tweak the amount. You might have to write the date in if somebody scribbled it. But it can, and their systems are getting better and better. So really, tonight is not about training anybody to use Xero. Tonight is about giving you a taster of what Xero can do if you use Xero, what you or your bookkeeper will have to do. You can see whether this is the sort of thing, the sort of disciplined administrative work that, you see, I can post invoices and things, but you've got to be a little bit sharp to notice that they've only paid £100 out of 250. You've got to be a good clerical person. Some people have good clerical minds. They can see details. It's very easy to just sort of click that and say, oh yeah, the name right, the invoice number, the supplier name looks right, and not notice that it was a part payment. So you have to decide, having seen this, if you want to use Xero, also whether this is for you to work on or you need help using it. So I think we should, unless you've got anything more to add to that or any other special features, I think we should open it up to Q&A. So I want to keep the screen open. So I'm not going to, the Xero on the desktop, so I can't see people's hands. So as there's only a small number of us on tonight, anybody who wants to ask a question, please just unmute now and shout out. And if 2 of you shout out, I'll decide who goes first.
Well, I've got a question.
Dermot's got a raised hand, if you can raise a hand. Okay, Dermot, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just pretty basic questions as usual from me. I've got reams and reams of paper here. Sort of scan in or write into a ledger every year, and then type it into Excel. And it just sounds like this could be a way of saving a lot of time using HubDoc on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Once we've scanned the stuff in, the paper receipts then can be binned. Is that right? Is it backed up or?
Yeah. So they'll be stored in HubDoc, and they'll also be stored in Xero. So you've got two resources there where you're going to be able to find them. And HMRC are happy with electronic copies for everything now, so you don't need to keep them.
Okay, and using HubDoc, I can do it pretty much instantly whilst I'm purchasing a cup of coffee or on the road, or if I'm buying a packet of screws, whatever it is, I can do that fairly instantly.
There's a HubDoc app, so it's literally like you open it up and it's got a little plus button. You press that, you take your photo, you submit, and it goes.
Okay, that sounds.
And then you'd log into it on the desktop to actually view and kind of code up where you want it coding, or if you're using a bookkeeper to do that, they do that for you.
Okay, and what about if I'm starting using Xero mid-year? Is it just a case of going back through all the paperwork and using the HubDoc to quickly drop it into the system? Yeah. Okay, and Clive talked about it before. Clive, you talked about one bank account, but I've got couple of bank accounts for different strategies, and I've also got properties in my own name and also in a limited company name.
Well, let me just
one platform.
Let me answer that and then pass on to Lindsay to answer the second part of it. If you've got some properties in your own name and some properties in a limited company, you will need two installations of Xero.
Yeah.
That's 100% for sure. If in either of those businesses, either of them, you have more than one bank account, and don't forget, cash is a bank account in inverted commas. A credit card is a bank account in inverted commas. So everybody has probably got, in any business, more than one bank account.
Yeah.
They've probably got the main current account for the business. Then they've got a bank account called cash. Then they've got a bank account called credit card. So you can have as many, I mean, there probably is ultimately a limit, but you'll never use the limit. You can have as many bank accounts, credit card accounts, cash accounts in any one installation, any one business. But you will need two installations if you have personal property or a personal business. I mean, I've got two businesses. I may have more than that, but I've got my accountancy business and I've got my property business. So I already have two installations of Xero. So, so you will need two for that.
Yeah. So you can have as many bank accounts on there as you need. I've got a client that's got about 17 accounts on his. So you can add as many, and most banks now support bank feeds. So that's the easiest way of doing it, is connecting a bank feed on there, because it will bring all your transactions in. You haven't got to manually import anything or manually input anything. So you can connect as many as you want and connect all the bank feeds, and it'll be beautiful. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Right. Who else has got there? Oh, we've got David Fisher has got his hand up. David, unmute and go ahead, please.
Hi, it's actually Jenny. I'm on David's machine.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Hi, Jenny.
I just wondered, could you show me where you found the email address for Xero?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, business and bills to pay. And in the top right corner, you've got automate bill entry, just here.
I can't see the top right corner because my thing's in the way. Aha. Right. So it was business.
Bills to pay.
Yeah, top
and
right.
Then automate bill entry.
Automate bill entry. Right.
You click on that at the bottom. There's a unique email address, and you can just copy that.
Right. Lovely.
And I usually tell people to copy it and then save it as a contact in their email. So then, save it as Xero bills, and then every time you've got an invoice that comes in, just straight away forward to Xero bills, and it's gone then, and you don't need to worry about it. You're not going back 6 months later trying to find an invoice. It's already in there.
Yeah, that's great.
Do you notice how that email starts with the word bills?
Yeah.
There are some people who, like a plumber typically, who go out and do these call outs that they charge an extortionate amount for 10 minutes work, £100, and they literally raise an invoice at the door.
Yeah.
And I presume, Lindsay, that they email them to sales rather than bills.
No.
There's probably a different, slightly.
It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It's not like that in sales. It's completely different.
Right.
So in sales, what those kind of tradesmen are you probably doing is using the Xero app, because it's in your hand there. And in the same way that you raise your invoice here, you're doing exactly that on the app.
I see. Yes, of course,
so
because
then,
it's their own invoice.
Yeah.
They're actually raising it in Xero rather than.
So when you click send on that, it's coming. You set up your settings in Xero so that when you're sending an invoice, it shows as your name. So if anyone replies to it, it comes back to your email account rather than getting lost somewhere in Xero. It will automatically default back to your email account. So if I send an invoice out of Xero and you replied to it, it would email my inbox rather than going into Xero and getting lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. So Karen's got her hand up. Karen Devine, please.
Hi there. Hi, Clive. Yeah, hi. Just wondering though, if you've don't raise invoices. So, for instance, I have a service that people pay me online. Either when they come, or I trust them when they leave because they're all client type things.
Yeah.
How does it work then with this? I mean, obviously, I've just got to link this to then my bank account just to pull off payments in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you link your bank account, and I'll just go back into the bank account now and just look for a little bank receipt somewhere.
This is a good question, Karen, and we did actually see an example of it before. I think it was called Majestic, and Lindsay said, but it was probably lost on people slightly.
Yeah, I missed it.
A receipt of £450 from Majestic, and she said, "You know what? I know what it is. They've paid me. I'm not going to bother raising a sales invoice." Either because she was showing us an example of posting it direct to sales and not bothering to raise an invoice, or for whatever reason, she said, "I'm not going to." This is quite like your business, Karen, and I understand your business because if I go for a massage or physio and get charged 50 quid, I pay the guy online.
Yeah.
And he knows I don't want an invoice. If I did, he'd send me one. So he sees my 50 quid and he just posts it straight to sales. Yeah.
Right.
That's what you do here. So if you look at this £200 received, it's just a bank deposit. So somebody's paid £200 in. We don't know who it is. We don't know what it's for. You might know what it's for, but it doesn't particularly matter if you've not got a name. You could just say, I don't know, cash sales, and you paid the £200 in, so you're going straight into sales. And if it's a VATable business, you put your VAT code. If not, you're going to have no VAT. You can also change your tracking code if you need to. If you want to put somebody's name in there, you can. But effectively, the main thing you need to get here is that sales code. So that £200 goes into sales. And as soon as you do that, and I click OK, if I go and look in my account transactions, and I look for my sales. There it is, £200 received. So notice how most of them are all receivable invoices because they're all invoices that have been raised, and when they're raised, they get coded to sales. But because Majestic, the one that we did before, and that £200 didn't have an invoice, they just say receive money because the money's just gone straight into the account and gone straight into sales. It works in exactly the same way. It still sits in the same place in your account, still shows as sales. There's no invoice for it. And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
The same would be said on the other side for payments.
Yeah.
Let's say if you pay £10 every month for a bank charge. Now, in my opinion, you don't need to raise an invoice. You won't get an invoice for a bank charge. So you can post the payment straight to bank charges or bank fees. Now, I have got one or two clients who are a bit particular, and they actually take a photocopy of the bank statement on which the bank charge is, or they use that little slip that you get with your bank statement every month, and they enter that as an invoice and then mark it off as paid. Well, frankly, I think that's a terrible waste of time.
Yeah.
A real waste of time.
Yeah.
I'd be tempted to do that. Tempted, but I probably still wouldn't if there was VAT on the bank charges. But certainly where there's no VAT, I would just post that straight to bank charges and save the time entering an invoice and matching it. Because you've got two stages you're saving now. You're saving the stage of entering the invoice. You're saving the stage of matching the invoice to the payment. And all you're doing is the third stage, which is literally posting the payment to bank charges. So it's the same as your example, Karen, on the income side. In certain businesses, if it's not necessary or you don't raise an invoice, then that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Okay, Karen, we've got another hand raised. Bob Ladell. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for that, Lindsay. That was very good. But I find myself sort of missing out on the Janet and John bit to intro. You mentioned HubDoc.
Yes.
In the middle of all that. A quick look online seems to be that HubDocs is some other service which Xero provide, but I'm really not clear what it's all about. Can you go back to the Janet and John bit and explain that, please?
So HubDoc is a data capture software. So you can scan your big pile of invoices, all your bills. You can scan them and upload them into HubDoc, and it will read each of them and create that invoice to put into Xero rather than you manually typing them in there.
So when you say scan, with what?
So you can scan with a scanner, or you can take photos using the HubDoc app.
Okay.
So
if you use the HubDoc app, correct me if I'm wrong, you've got to take a photo of each one.
Yeah, separate.
And then hit send or submit. If, however, you've got a pile of invoices, and I do this regularly. I did 60 odd invoices today for a client. My scanner will take up to 80 sheets of paper. So I blasted all 60 odd sheets through my scanner, saved them into HubDoc, and then clicked. Well, if it's and then clicked integrate or upload or whatever the term is, and they're just it knows for that client. I'm sorry to confuse, because I set it to that particular client. It blasted it into that particular client's Xero account. We had them all listed, and you just approve, go cast your eye down them and go, approve this one, approve this one. Oh dear, it said £28.50 and the invoice is £28.60. I'll just manually correct that, and then I'll approve it. Am I right, Lindsay?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the demonstration this evening, which of the Xero subscriptions does this relate to?
This is the standard subscription, but it does have payroll and projects added on, but we've not looked at those.
Right. So payroll and project is something extra they charge for?
Yes.
Right, okay.
So I've not looked at those because they're not included in the standard package.
Okay.
Obviously, you don't need them unless you're using payroll, and projects probably wouldn't use it anyway. Don't particularly rate it.
I see.
It's for time recording for jobs. For my job in particular, there are better things out there to use for recording time than Xero projects. So it's not something I would personally recommend. There's probably people out there that will disagree with me, but
what would you use instead?
Well, I'd use a bespoke accountancy software because that's what I do. It depends what your job is. There's loads and loads of different apps available in the Xero app store.
They tend to be bespoke for the type of industry.
Yeah.
So solicitors do it. They actually have systems that know when they've picked up the phone and put it back down, and it captures how long they were on and who to. So it's all very bespoke projects. A lot of the software providers like Sage like to offer a complete package, but they're really excellent at the core accountancy stuff when they go into things like projects, because they could only offer one system on their own system. They're not always ideal for the type of industry that you might be in.
Okay. And do I understand correctly that with Xero and HubDoc working together, that satisfies all the Making Tax Digital stuff?
Yeah. You've got your bank feeds bringing all your bank transactions in. You've got all your invoices electronically. There's no room for error with the bank feeds coming in. If you're manually inputting bank transactions, that's where errors can happen. But all that together
your
works.
question, it entirely satisfies keeping digital records, just as it would do on Excel, incidentally. And of course, Xero has a direct line or online connection to HMRC, and you'll be able to digitally or online, whatever the term is, submit your VAT returns and submit, when they start doing it, your quarterly reports.
Direct from Xero?
Yeah, direct from Xero.
Yeah. So the VAT returns, we didn't look at that actually. So you can file VAT returns in here. This is obviously a demo company, so it's not going to show me it. But let's just click on this. It will bring up a screen. It connects to your HMRC account, so it will know exactly what period you're looking for your VAT return. It knows how much you're outstanding from your last VAT return if you've not paid it. It tells you when it's due. It knows everything. It links directly into your VAT account because it's all MTG compliant. So you can do that, and you can also use this for self-assessment as well. It depends if you're going to do that yourself or not. I know some accountants use separate tax filing software.
So you can do your personal accounts from tax return from here as well?
Yes.
Cool. And one of the questions that was asked over the Excel the other week was in respect of updates. Presumably, this being Xero and online, Xero deal with all of the updates automatically for you, transparently, without you having to do anything.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the advantages of any cloud-based software, that behind the scenes they can update the system for any bugs or any changes in legislation. To be fair, apart from the features like its tax soft aspects, you know, accountancy doesn't change. But if they find a bug like or they improve the ability for it to match payments to invoices, then that benefit will seamlessly apply to the system you're using.
Okay.
There's also, so in the top right corner, there's like a little bell icon, which is notifications. So when they make any changes, they'll often give you a little notification there just to tell you we've updated this. I use payroll on Xero for some of my clients, and when HMRC issue a new tax code for an employee, I'll get a notification there that will say we've updated this person's tax code, because HMRC will automatically connect to our payroll in Xero. So payroll's connected, VAT's connected, and self-assessment can be connected as well.
Very good. Does it give you a notification if you've emailed an invoice in?
It gives you a notification if it's failed.
Okay.
It doesn't tell you if it's been emailed in. You'd go into your draft bills to see if there's anything in there.
Or carry on, Bob.
It will tell you if something's failed.
Sorry. And while you're flashing through approving all these things in about half a second flash, you probably realise you've made a mistake. How do you backtrack and undo that mistake?
So you can go to accounting and advanced, and there's a history section there. So you can see all the things that you've done. You can also filter that down to if it's on a specific day or a specific person's used it. So if you've got 4 different people using your Xero account, each person would all have their own login, because otherwise this wouldn't work. And it doesn't matter how many people you have as users, there's no extra charge for that. So you could have 50 users on your Xero account and it would only ever be one fee. But you can filter this just to say, I only want to see what Lindsay's done, and then apply that. And then I can go down and say, oh yeah, okay, I reconciled that payment there from Majestic, but it's not right. So I can click into it and I can go options and edit transaction. And I can change that and say, actually, that was the wrong property. It needs to be number 1 Main Street. And then I can update it. And then that's done. And if you want to view that transaction to see how it looks now, click on there and go back into it. And it tells you at the bottom as well that I've edited it. If you look at your history, it tells you everything that's happened to it, when it was created, when it was approved, when it was edited.
Okay, and presumably you can work interactively with your bookkeeper and say, well, actually, I misadvised that invoice. It should actually go to property A instead of property B. Yeah,
that's and you can add notes in there as well. So if you see at the bottom here, you could say, I've amended this as property was incorrect, and just add that in there. So when someone logs in to see why is that being edited, there's a note there that tells me why it's been edited.
Okay. Thanks both.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so we've not got any more questions. So, Lindsay, is there anything that you particularly would like to mention that either you didn't or you've just thought of as we've been going through? I can't think of any main.
No, I don't think so.
No. Yeah, that's fine. Just really to make a couple of points. There are and we won't go through this now because it's you'd need to go on Google and have a look at it. There are a number of packages available from the standard upwards, but there are also some accountant only packages available, which are actually quite competitively priced. So if your accountant is Xero registered, or Xero partner they call it, then there are some packages that they can let you have that still do most of the features, or in fact, all of the features you want. So that's one point to make.
Can I just add in on that?
Yeah, please.
If it's an accountant partner only package, you as a You as a client don't get access to that. Only the accountant can have access to that. So you could only use one of those subscriptions if your accountant or bookkeeper is doing all the work on it.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point to make. Just to clarify that, if you use a partner-only package, you can actually log in and have a look at the profit and loss accounts and have a look at things, but you can't edit. It's read-only. Is that correct, Lindsay?
Yeah.
It's read only. So the other packages are only for where your accountant or bookkeeper, and they can be separate businesses, separate because you can invite different users to use the system. So you don't have to have the same bookkeeper in the same accountant's office or something like that. So there are packages where the bookkeeper so just be aware of that. And really, to go back to the beginning, I think that it's really a matter of you deciding for your property business or any other business whether you feel that something like Xero is overkill for the number of transactions you've got. If you've got 18 transactions a year or even 30 or 40 transactions a year, I'm not saying that Xero's not worth using because it probably is. But you might think that to learn a system like that, when you could use a simple spreadsheet, whether it's my spreadsheet or something even simpler, i.e. just literally a list of invoices, is all you need. And if you're doing it, you may find, because you've got familiarity with Excel, that you could keep a list of invoices on Excel, but that you can't get your head round using something like Xero. I did say, incidentally, when we did the Excel demo, there's nothing to stop you scanning in your invoices and producing a list of all your invoices. You can do that with HubDoc. You can do that with other versions of HubDoc, like Auto Entry or Dext. I think that QuickBooks now owns Auto Entry, and I think Sage now own Dext, and obviously Xero now own HubDoc. And they've bought them because were the three main scanning software, and they are the three main accountancy programs. But if you don't want to scan straight into Xero, you can scan straight to an Excel spreadsheet. You can scan your bank statement straight to an Excel spreadsheet. Of course, you probably don't need to, because most banks allow you to download a CSV or Excel file. But if a client gives me a paper copy of their bank statements and won't allow me access to their bank account, or they don't know how to do a download, then I just scan them into Auto Entry and get them converted to an Excel spreadsheet. So it doesn't stop you, but obviously Excel doesn't have a bank feed, and it doesn't, and you can't. But it's fully HMRC compliant for making tax digital. You have to decide which system you're comfortable with, which system you want to use, or ask a bookkeeper to use. You might use Excel and ask a bookkeeper to do that for you. It's all called using a VA, a virtual assistant. So any jobs you can pass out to other people, but the demos were designed to give you a taste and to help you make a decision as to which one suits your business, suits you personally, and whether you personally want to do the work yourself or get somebody else to do it. Any comments there, Lindsay, or any questions on that? I'm just checking if anyone's hand is up. If there is, I'd just suggest anybody who wants a final question just unmute while I say goodbye and thank you to Lindsay. There's no more questions, Lindsay. So I suggest you unshare your screen, Lindsay, and we'll just wave goodbye.
Oh,
fabulous.
Okay. So hopefully
Thanks,
that was
Lindsay.
interesting
Thanks,
for those people who are on and watch the recording. And we'll see you next time. Thanks very much, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time and trouble to join us. That was excellent, just as I planned it. So well done. Thank you very much.
See you later.
And good night. Bye.